One of the most frequent questions I've been asked by leaders and managers in the last 15 years of doing leadership work, business improvement, wherever people are involved, is how do I motivate my team? How do I motivate Johnny? Sue's a bit slow. How can I motivate Sue? How can I get them, and secondary questions, how can I get them to perform more highly, be more productive? And I've always been intrigued by that question. And a number of years ago, my roses gave me some insight. So I love roses. I was looking at my rose garden. I thought, you know, I never wish that my roses were more motivated. I never wish they would perform better. And if I was a bit grumpy about that, I'd look back at the gardener. But I realised that if I provide the right conditions for my roses, they will flourish. But if I don't provide the right conditions, they'll survive at best and die at worst. And I've come to see that we as people and our teams, our colleagues, our customers, are not too dissimilar to my rose bushes. My partner, Michelle, who I met in the back row of an aeroplane, just as a side, is a clinical psychologist. And I've done a lot of study around behaviourism and people improvement over the years. And so we came up with a concept that I'd like to share with you this evening that may help you in managing your team, your people, and yourself for that matter. So on the left side of the screen that Darren's going to bring up now, we have the cause side of it. On the right side, we've got effect. Under the cause side, I like to loosely term these as the conditions. We've got the personal domain, which is everything that makes up the wonderful you, the wonderful me. So our relationships, our financial status, our health, our personal histories, our skill sets, and so forth. Then we enter the work domain, and there's a whole lot of conditions at work. Our job conditions, pay conditions, our KPIs we've got to meet, our colleagues, our customers, the workspace and the environment. And all of these conditions have an effect over onto the right-hand side of performance. And you'll notice the interfering state there. So when I consult the companies, I'm typically requested by the business owner to come in and help somebody or some area of the business because of a performance issue. It's not what it should be. And what I've often found, especially working with people, but even in broader business improvement, is that there's something gets in the way. There's an interfering state. And often that's related across to the left-hand side of the screen, the conditions, whether it's a personal issue, personal condition, or whether it's in the workspace. I was called by a client and she said, I need you to fix my scheduler. So he was scheduling work for maintenance. How many are schedulers? You're not putting your hand up. And he was a Simpro user. And I said, what's the issue? She said, I've got too many pissed off customers phoning me asking where we are. He's not booking in jobs, he's not letting customers know we're late, he's not updating them. So I said, okay, sounds good, I'll give this one a shot. And what I found was his interfering state was a fear of being yelled at. Now logic would tell you that if you phoned your customers, you're not going to get yelled at. But I've often found that logic isn't a good way to start conversations. So I found out in his personal world, he had had a history of being yelled at from his family. So he was scared of it. And then in the work domain, his boss had a degree of assertiveness, shall we say, and would sometimes raise her voice. So he copped it all of his life. He comes into work, his bosses up him at times, and then the customers are up him as well. So it was a miserable existence for him. So now I couldn't change the yelling from the past, but I could change one thing in the work condition, and that was to turn the business owner from being assertive and sometimes aggressive to that of praise. So every time he you catch him doing good, just sprinkle it with praise. Just tell him he's doing really well. And the other thing I changed, one other conditions was in his personal world, was upgraded his skill set to help him deal with customers, cranky customers. So we worked through some tactics on that. The final thing I did was create an Excel spreadsheet. On one column, it had proactive calls to the customers. And then on the other column, it was where are you calls. And so he had to enter every single call he did during the day in the proactive chart and every pissed off customer that was coming in. And the reason I did that was I wanted the proactive calls to be a reinforcer that if he did that, it was going to reinforce the right behaviours. Because I knew that angry customers would disappear. And over a 3-month period, they reduced by 62%. Pretty much all the angry customers had gone. It was just, just general call-ins. But it was a case of low performance, understanding what was getting in the way, and then changing some of those conditions and upgrading some skills to help him. I did this with another girl who her interfering state was overwhelm, and she would sit at a desk, customer service area. She would sit at a desk with her head in her hands and wasn't able to work frequently. And they were full-blown panic attacks. And I worked with her for 6-9 months, shifting conditions in the personal world and at work, and over that period of time dissolved those panic attacks. And there was one other woman, senior administrator. The client said I pay her for 8 hours, but she's only productive for 4 or 5. And I said, what's the issue? She said she doesn't wake up until late morning. So she's, dreary, not dreary, it's the wrong word, just not, performing well early in the morning. And I found out in her personal world, she was heavily medicated for anxiety. So I couldn't change that, but I could change a condition at work. And that was start her later in the morning. And that fixed the performance issue overnight. I was sharing some of these stories with an employment lawyer, and she just said, that's a real credit to those business owners and managers who have got you in, because most would have found a way to get them out the door. And so I say this to you, for those of you who manage others, see if you can look past the performance issues, because sometimes we get caught up there. And just see if you can step back. It's a bit like my plants. What are the nutrients, what are the conditions that my plants need to thrive? And then I try to tailor that accordingly. And most times, they thrive.